Hello there and welcome to the Trending Now podcast for a Friday, November the 10th, 2023. I'm your host, Louis Butko, and thank you for joining us as we take a look back on the week that was on Trending Now, which you can catch every Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. and 11:30 on CHCH, chch.com, and streaming live on our Trending Now YouTube page. Coming up on today's show, the latest on the war between Israel and Hamas, as Israeli officials have agreed to halt military action daily for 4 hours in areas of northern Gaza so that residents can flee south. Matt Ingram is hosting Trending Now and will join us with the latest. The carbon tax front and center in Canadian politics this week as opposition leader Pierre Pollievre accuses the Prime Minister of forming a coalition to vote down a carbon tax amendment. And after 118 days, U.S. actors are headed back to work after their union agrees to a tentative deal with Hollywood studios to end their strike. Trending Now producer Laura Sebben joins us with that and the latest from the world of entertainment. But we start, as mentioned, in Israel, as the Israel and Hamas war continues. And Matt Ingram, the 4-hour daily pauses, this is something new this week, is it not?
This is, yeah. This just became official, I guess, yesterday, the U.S. actually announcing it. Joe Biden saying that he was pushing for a 3-day pause in order to hopefully have some extra time to try and get some of the hostages out. Remember, there's still 240 hostages. Many of them are believed to be foreign nationals in addition to Israelis. So they were looking for more, but the military, the Israeli military, is committed to 4 hours a day, announcing 3 hours beforehand that they're going to stop their military operations so people in northern Gaza can get to this evacuation corridor. It's one road from the north to the south. The idea being that they get out of the north, where Israeli forces are clashing with Hamas militants, and to the south, which Israel keeps saying is a safe area. Of course, we all know that's not true. There's nowhere safe in Gaza, especially if you consider the humanitarian situation, which is spiraling out of control. So let's say you don't get bombed and you make it to the south. There's very little food, water, or medical support for you.
This war has obviously been going on now over a month. This week marked 1 month. We got the latest here as Israel has revised their death toll in the 7th October attacks to about 1,200. That's down from 1,400, which they initially said. What did we learn this week? What's changing? Is anything changing, or is it just the same?
Well, I think what we learned is the Israeli military is resolved to do what it said it's going to do, annihilate Hamas. Israel has been very hesitant to grant any sort of humanitarian pause. Remember, this has been called for a very long time now. Just this week, it finally happening. I know that a lot of this probably comes down to the behind-the-scenes work between the Americans and the Israelis to finally get this pause. But Israel is dead set on continuing this, and the people of Israel are dead set on having their military finish this job.
It's really tragic what's happening. Like, there's no denying that. But is there an end? Is there we've seen offers of hostages for a ceasefire. That's probably that 3-day thing. What have we made any developments in this war?
In terms of a ceasefire, no. So there have been ongoing calls, of course, for a ceasefire since the start of this thing, really. Western leaders have not gone that far. They've called for humanitarian pauses, which we're now starting to see. One expert we spoke with said a ceasefire is very, very unlikely, because a ceasefire means basically Israeli Defense Forces pack up and go home. It's the end. A ceasefire means the end. These humanitarian pauses mean they're not going anywhere. They're pausing their operations to allow people to get out and aid to get in. But a ceasefire seems a very remote possibility.
What are you looking for this weekend? What should we be watching?
Well, what's happening today is pretty dark, pretty graphic.
It's the hospitals?
It's the hospitals. So there's 4 hospitals in North Gaza. The Palestinian Health Ministry, which is controlled by Hamas, says that they were hit by Israeli strikes. Israel has confirmed that they are doing military operations near Al-Shifa Hospital, which is one of the hospitals. It's the biggest one. It's in Gaza City, which is right in the north. However, a spokesperson saying that Israel does not target hospitals, but they'll do what they have to do, I believe is the direct quote. They'll do what they have to do if fired upon from hospital grounds. So we're seeing video from Al-Shifa that's, very disturbing. This is a place where tens of thousands of displaced people were sheltering, coming under fire. That Hamas-controlled health ministry saying at least one person died at Al-Shifa and others were wounded. Rantisi Hospital, that's a children's hospital. There were tanks outside of it earlier today. There's a video that is getting a lot of play on social media and on international media outlets like Al Jazeera, France 24, that you see groups of people trying to leave the hospital. You don't see what's going on off camera, but then all of a sudden these people who were waving white flags run back into the hospital grounds. So there's lots of speculation about what's happening. What is for certain is that Israel's conducting a very intense military operation in the North Gaza, and there are tens of thousands of people still there, and they need to get out.
Yeah, a couple of the quotes here. You mentioned that. That's a direct quote. We'll do what we need to do. That's from IDF. They've also said Hamas has chosen to strategically position their terrorist capabilities in, under, and around hospitals. We have been trying to encourage people taking refuge in hospitals to evacuate. I mean, that line there, if you're taking refuge in a hospital, you probably don't want to be at a hospital in any sense.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Well, and the World Health Organization at a press conference, they said that Rantisi Hospital, the children's hospital, is the only pediatric hospital in North Gaza, and there's patients on dialysis. There's cancer patients. There's patients that just can't be evacuated. They can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So, they're being told to evacuate, but even if they get out, where do they go? How are you going to transport someone who needs constant hospital care to the south? And then, the Rafah border crossing was closed again today. I haven't gotten too much into that yet, but I know it was closed, so I don't think any more Palestinians or foreign nationals are going to be allowed to get out today. But even if they could, it's just a trickle every day. So, there's still millions of people sitting, waiting to find out what's next with no food, no water, or very little food and water, bad shelter. I mean, they're living in tents in the south right now. The Red Cross, yesterday, their spokesperson was calling it alarming. And I mean, maybe that doesn't sound bad, but these are the people who've been running an ambulance service in Gaza for a long time. And there's obviously been a lot of violence in Gaza for a long time. So to see how shook some of these people are at what's happening now, that says something to me as well.
I think it's important to remember 4.5 million people, basically in the size of a city of Philadelphia, is what we're looking at in Gaza.
I think it's 2.2.
2.2, yeah.
2.2.
I mean, just that stretch. It's one of the most dense places, population in the world.
Yeah, I think that's the quote.
And then the latest from Global Affairs Canada this hour is saying that none of the 266 Canadians on Friday's list of foreign nationals who were approved to leave the Gaza Strip were able to get out. You mentioned the Rafah border being closed.
That's squares, because it was closed earlier this week, too, because of a security incident. What exactly happened wasn't fully explained. But, the Red Cross is saying its ambulances were being shot at earlier this week. So the idea of a security issue in southern Gaza near the Rafah border, that does square.
Have you noticed a shift in tone from Biden, from Blinken? We heard Blinken say today that far too many Palestinians have died and that Israel is not doing enough to avoid civilian casualties. That's a bit more harsh than we've heard. John Kirby's been front and center. That's right. A bit more harsh than we've heard him talk about in this last month.
It's stronger language, and I think it reflects the fact that around the world you're seeing a real outcry to what's happening to the Palestinian people, and in America as well. I mean, we're every day almost hearing about protests in America. Certainly there have been big protests in Canada, in Europe. There's a big one, a pro-Palestinian march planned tomorrow in London, which squares up with Armistice Day. So Remembrance Day in Canada, Armistice Day in the UK. There is public pressure on Western leaders to do more for the Palestinians as opposed to just come out and say the same old things. Israel has a right to defend itself. It's terrible what we're seeing. We're pushing for a humanitarian pause. You know, a lot of people want their leaders to be calling for a ceasefire now.
Yeah, and you mentioned the United Nations Human Rights Chief Volker Turk said today that he called for an investigation into what he called Israel's indiscriminate bombardment and shelling in densely populated areas in the Gaza Strip. Matt, this is not easy stuff to cover. We appreciate you doing it, and we appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Matt Ingram, you can catch him as the host of Trending Now. All right, time to get to some other stories that were making headlines this week. Trending in Canadian politics this week. Opposition leader Pierre Pollievre accused Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of forming a coalition and shoring up support due to lagging polling numbers after the Bloc Québécois joined the Liberals in voting down a carbon tax amendment. This week, the Tory leader's motion to take the carbon price off all forms of home heating until after the next election failed inside the House of Commons. On Wednesday, during question period, in the 10 jurisdictions where federal fuel charges apply, Trudeau says the move was to alleviate rising costs in oil heating and encourage homes to use heat pumps. Meanwhile, in a twist, Jagmeet Singh and the New Democrats supported Poilievre's push to offer a bigger tax relief. Now, the non-binding motion was presented last week after the Prime Minister announced the pause on carbon pricing in the 10 jurisdictions where federal fuel charges apply. Trudeau says the move was to alleviate rising costs in oil heating and encourage people to use heat pumps. Now, one province where the federal levy doesn't apply, that's Quebec. Now, according to national stats, heating oil accounts for only about 7% of all homes nationally, but about 30% in Atlantic Canada. Meanwhile, Canada's premiers formed their own rare coalition out in Atlantic Canada in Halifax, where they called on Ottawa to deliver carbon pricing in an equitable way. In trending news in the U.S., it may have been an off-year election, but the voters across the U.S. who cast ballots this week sent big messages. Democrats marked key victories in several races and ballot measures, despite what polls about the impending 2024 presidential election showdown say. Now, including a victory for reproductive rights activists in Ohio, as voters casting their ballots enshrine the right to an abortion in Ohio's Constitution. That's just the latest state to do so in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade last year. The decision, shockingly, is being respected by some U.S. Republicans. Meanwhile, in Virginia, Democrats swept the state legislature in a rebuke to Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin. He sought to pursue what he called reasonable abortion restrictions if the GOP took control of both chambers. Now, abortion access proving to be a driving force for voters, which could be helpful to Democratic prospects in 2024. But despite the party victories, polling of registered voters shows trouble for President Joe Biden's re-election chances as he's come up short in hypothetical matchups against former President Donald Trump and other GOP candidates. Now, a mix of U.S. politics and Canadian politics, right-wing USA TV personality Tucker Carlson will have a conversation with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith in January when he's scheduled to speak in Calgary. Carlson, who was fired by Fox News in April, says he will make remarks and have a conversation with Smith. The Premier's office says in a statement that Smith participates in a variety of events and does interviews with people from across the political spectrum. It adds that she doesn't subscribe to every view of every interviewer or reporter. Meanwhile, opposition NDP leader Rachel Notley calling Carlson an extremist and Smith's decision, quote, a serious lack of judgment. To entertainment news, the 118-day soap opera in Hollywood is getting ready to exit stage left as the longest strike ever for film and television actors ended at 12:01 yesterday morning. According to union officials, the tentative agreement will, quote, enable SAG-AFTRA members from every category to build sustainable careers. And for more on this, I'm very pleased to be joined by Laura Sebben. She is the producer and co-creator of Trending Now.
Oh, we're back at that.
We're back at that.
Okay.
I think it's worth acknowledging that you are a co-creator of this program that we do.
Thank you.
You can take co-creator credit for the podcast too if you want.
Well, it was part of the idea of the show.
So you are going to take okay, never mind then. The actor strike. This is big news. I mean, it had to end eventually. You would hope.
Yeah, you would hope.
But this is big news.
It is. It's pretty big news. A lot of stuff got pushed back this year. Some movies in particular that I was really looking forward to see now aren't going to be releasing until deep into next year because of this strike. And it was truly mostly because of promo. Like most of these movies that were coming out in the back half of this year that were affected by the strike were done. For some of the movies that were in post-production, they had to be pushed back while the WGA strike was going on because writers have a little bit left to do in post-production. But most of the movies that were set had dates to be released at the end of this year. It was solely just promo because they
couldn't go on talk shows. You couldn't go on talk shows. I mean, this is going to be huge for a lot of people. I mean, like Colbert, all those late night shows can actually have actors on. So you may have noticed once the writer strike ended, yes, they've had people on, but it's been a lot of athletes. It's been a lot of newsmakers.
Yeah.
But not a lot of actors. So people will notice a change right away.
Oh yeah, you're gonna see Jason Momoa and Timothée Chalamet everywhere because they have movies coming out in December that are big budget movies that the studio spent a lot of money. Wonka, yes, and Aquaman, the second Aquaman comes out in December.
What?
Yeah,
just the second?
Unfortunately, they made two in the first place.
Is Amber Heard in this one?
Yes, she is. Although you wouldn't know it from the trailer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Speaking of trailers, we're going to get to other entertainment news, incling People's Sexiest Man Alive, which wasn't me. I was told
my God.
early on in the process that it wasn't going to be me, which is upsetting. I thought I was in the running this year. But speaking of trailers, Mean Girls came out, and I went to you right away and was like, it looks like they're just doing the exact same movie 10 years later with some of the same characters, like Tina Fey and
the same actors. Yes,
same actors. But same actors, different characters. What's the deal with this new movie? Why is it? Why?
Mean Girls is the new movie that's coming out. Is going to be the exact same plot as the original Mean Girls, but the twist, if people who are not up in Broadway circles won't know about, is that this new movie is based on the Broadway musical, which was based on the original movie. So it's basically the exact same story, except they sing and dance in it.
Which you wouldn't know by the trailer.
No, they really buried the lead with that. And I will also say, I took issue in the trailer with, they opened it up being like, this isn't your mother's Mean Girls. How old do they think the people who watched Mean Girls when it first came out were?
When did it come out?
2004.
That's 19 years ago.
Yeah, but most of the people watching it aren't mothers now.
It was PG-13. Do the math. If it was a PG-13 movie,
I'm just saying you
could have been 15.
I think it's bold to assume the original audience of that movie are mothers now. I think that's bold.
Wow.
I would say.
Okay. All right.
I watched that movie when it came out.
Yeah, everybody did. Everybody did. Rachel McAdams, Lindsay Lohan, it was the movie. Speaking of 2004.
I mean, I'll put an asterisk beside that. It's possible I'm wrong, but I'm
that it came out in 2000. Yeah, I mean that checks. Sure. We got facts, people. We'll check it. Mm-hmm. Speaking of 2004. That's when I thought this People's Sexiest Man thing would have happened. The Dr. Derek Shepherd, a.k.a. McDreamy on Grey's Anatomy. That's a show that probably came out back then. Yeah. He was named
on.
Is it still on? What? But none of the original characters, right?
No, I think one of the... maybe there's two original characters
I knew more than a couple of people who during the pandemic watched every single episode, all 20 of them, back to back. Yeah. Should we still be doing this? Sexiest Man Alive? Aren't we past that as a society in 2023?
How often do we objectify men though? We don't do that a lot.
I mean, we shouldn't be objectifying anyone.
We shouldn't, but we don't do it to men enough.
Canceled.
No, I'm just kidding.
Canceled.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's fun. I think it's a little novelty thing. I think people have fun with it. I know my mom was thrilled to find out it was him this year. She's big.
They've been trending older, though, have they not?
They have. I said this.
It's kind of like the Golden
People
Bachelor.
Magazine, they went through a BLM renaissance where they realized that I think The Rock was literally the only black man that was selected as sexiest man alive.
Yeah.
And then when the BLM protests were happening during COVID and onward, they had 3 black men back to back.
Yeah.
Michael B. Jordan, John Legend, which was a questionable choice, and Idris Elba. And then now they're in like the older, loosely older men grind. It was Paul Rudd and then Chris Evans and now Patrick Dempsey.
Taylor Swift apparently had similar issues in Vancouver that she did in Toronto. We've talked to Eric Alper on Trending Now a couple of times, right? He said 30 million people registered for a chance to buy tickets for 6 shows in Toronto, and a number of people for Vancouver.
Who are these people?
Are you okay? So I haven't had the chance to ask.
Are we assuming that it's 30 million out of 40 million Canadians? Because I want to know who's snaking their way into these Canadian sales.
Did you even want to go to the concert?
I didn't, but I feel for the fans. It's not about me not being able to go. I feel as a fan.
You would have gone though if you had won the code, or would you have sold the tickets?
No, I would have gone.
Yeah,
it would have been a good time. But
you're not
as a fan who likes artists who likes to go to concerts, I feel for the Swifties who want to go see her, and somehow 30 million people appeared out of nowhere who also want to see her. Like, it's frustrating just given the amount of shows she's done elsewhere. It's frustrating to have only 2 locations in Canada and see. I'm sure it wasn't just 30 million Canadians. There were
a lot of Canadians I know who went to Detroit, who went to Pittsburgh.
Because they were worried she wasn't going to come. But when she's doing like 7 shows in each city, like, I think it's okay if other people show up. But 2 cities in one country.
Speaking
let the people have.
Of Taylor Swift, the nominations for the 2024 Grammy Awards are out, and no surprise, Taylor Swift is up for a couple, but it's SZA leading the pack. You like how I said that?
Yeah.
SZA leading the pack with 9 nominations. Phoebe Bridgers.
Correct. Good job.
I always thought it was Phoebe Bridges.
No, it's got an R at the end.
Wow, I learned something new. She's got 7. Victoria Monet.
Yeah.
But Taylor Swift, are the Grammys still relevant these days?
They float in and out.
How so?
Because I feel like some years they try to remain relevant by bringing in artists that they know are popular. So, like, for example, as much as I love and appreciate Lizzo's music, not last year, but the year before or 2 years before, when she was nominated for a bunch of stuff, her album was old and like had come out 2 years earlier, and the Grammys completely ignored her, but then she blew up and they were like, oh my God, let's nominate Lizzo. So in that sense, I feel like sometimes they're a little bit weird because they try to follow the trends, but then they'll snub people like The Weeknd and 2 years in a row, Morgan Wallen, who have like the biggest albums like in the not even in the country, like in the world, like holding the top spot for like 40, 50, 60% of the year. So they'll snub those people, but then bring in other popular people. It's hard to tell if it's really about like the actual music anymore, or if it's just what they think is cool.
Billie Eilish up for a couple. She's got Labyrinth featuring Billie Eilish, Never Felt So Alone. She's up for Best Pop Duo Group Performance. Like, you look at there's not a lot of like different names on this list.
No.
It's a lot of like,
yeah.
If it's like, Song of the Year, Billie Eilish, Dua Lipa, John Baptiste, Lana Del Rey, Miley Cyrus, Olivia Rodrigo, SZA, Taylor Swift. And then you go to like Best Solo Performance, Billie Eilish, Doja Cat, Miley Cyrus, Olivia Rodrigo, Taylor Swift. Yeah.
But I think the nominees this year, and not to discount the nominees or anything, when the nominees came out today, I was like, oh, there wasn't really a lot of music that came out in the eligibility period, was there? Because
There's actually
some of them seem like a choice.
Is Labyrinth a male?
Yes.
Okay, because he's the only male on the list of Best Pop Duo Group Performances. Oh no, John Baptiste is there too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it was very women heavy this year.
It was
wonderful.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Drake broke his Grammys boycott this year submitted some stuff from her loss.
So the Weeknd didn't. I mean, I don't know if he had new music, but he's like given up on.
I don't know if he's given up. He's just kind of still a little bit salty about it. And Drake was salty about it for a really long time. And he didn't submit his music for a really, really long time.
And you were pretty fired up about Chris Brown being nominated for Best R&B Performance. You were fired up?
I'm fired up because
Chris Brown's still a thing, even though he beat up your hero. I mean, obviously he's a piece of crap.
But it's not just Rihanna. He has beat up multiple women since her, and then goes online and says slurs and stuff like that. And, you know, if we're not going to nominate the biggest artist of the year, Morgan Wallen, because he said the N-word, which is fair, that's deserved, why are we nominating Chris Brown, who says slurs on the regular, beats women? Like, I don't know. This is what I mean about the Grammys. It's weird. I don't know what their eligibility requirements are. I don't know.
You got big plans for the weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to see Pete Davidson tomorrow.
What? And John Mulaney? Or is it
no, it's just Pete.
It's just Pete.
They're coming together, I think.
Where are you going? Where's that?
Really? In Toronto, the Elgin Garden Theatre.
Very cool. Pete Davidson.
Yes, it was my friend's birthday. She wanted to go, and I'm also bringing my sister because my sister loves Pete Davidson so much she might cry when he comes out, which is going to be really embarrassing. I'm going to get secondhand. But they're excited about it, and I'm just along for the ride.
All right. Well,
what about you?
Actually, I'm going to Arkells tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're playing at the Meridian Center in St. Catharines. So pretty excited for that. Matt Ingram, host of Trending Now, is also going.
Be there. Yeah,
that's also right. Going. So he brought up our boss Greg brought something up because I guess the Halloween episode of Trending Now has been running on weekends.
Yes, he let me know as well.
Yeah. So Matt says he's going to buy me a beer, so maybe I'll let him buy me a beer at the concert tonight.
There you go. But
that's it, and then I'm like shutting down for the rest of the week.
Okay, that's fair, and that's tonight, right?
That's tonight. Okay. Yeah.
I had a gasp there for a moment because I forgot what I was doing on Sunday. I get to go meet Gia. Kelly Vitello's baby. Yeah. So do that too.
Yeah. Well, that's very exciting. Tell Kelly that we miss her.
Yes, I will.
And we'll see her very soon. Not very soon, but we'll see her eventually.
Yeah, she's still got a little ways to go with that maternity leave.
A little bit. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Louis.
My thanks to Laura Sebben. My thanks to Matt Ingram, and my thanks to you for joining me as well. You may have mentioned may have seen if you're watching, I'm repping the Western Mustangs football sweater. They're taking on Laurier at the Yates Cup on Saturday. So best of luck to Greg Marshall, head coach of that team, and the rest of the Mustangs. Go Stangs. There you go. But thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate it. We could not do the show without your support. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you found this episode so you never miss an episode. Make sure you follow us on all of our Trending Now social channels. If you're watching, you can see them on the screen right there. And if you ever miss an episode of this show or any of the other great shows we have for you on CHCH Podcast, you can search CHCH Podcast wherever you get your favorite shows or go to chch.com/podcast. My thanks to Chantel for directing today's show. And one more time, thank you for listening. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louis Butko. Hoping you have a great weekend.